Did you know that over 100,000 actors worldwide have stayed closeted throughout their entire careers, afraid to lose everything just for being honest? From Hollywood heartthrobs like Rock Hudson to horror icon Anthony Perkins. Here are 20 gay celebrities who hid their sexuality until death. 1. Rock Hudson. He was one of the biggest names in movies during the 1950s and 1960s. Everyone saw him as the perfect man. He was tall, handsome, and always had the lead role in romantic films. People watched him fall in love on screen over and over again, thinking it was real. But it wasn't. Behind the scenes, Rock was living a very different life. He was gay, but he couldn't tell anyone. The world at that time wasn't kind to people like him. If he had said the truth, he would have lost everything: his job, his fans, and his image. So he stayed quiet. To keep the public from guessing, he even married a woman named Phyllis Gates. Many believed this was a fake marriage just to make him look straight. It didn't last long, but it helped him hide. He kept acting, kept smiling, and kept lying. All around him, the industry supported the lie. Hollywood wanted its stars to look a certain way, and Rock had to play along. No one was allowed to be different. Everything changed in 1984. Rock was diagnosed with AIDS. At first, people didn't know, but when the news got out, it shocked the world. It was the first time many people had heard of AIDS hitting a major celebrity. His illness made people ask questions. Why was Rock sick? What was he hiding? And then the truth came out. He was gay. He had been hiding it for decades. When Rock died in 1985, it was more than just the death of a movie star. It opened people's eyes to the fear and silence that came with being gay, especially in Hollywood. It showed how much pain people could carry just to be accepted. Some were angry he didn't speak out sooner. Others felt sorry he had to live that way. But one thing was clear: Rock Hudson didn't live his truth. He was forced to act, even off the screen. 2. Anthony Perkins. This name will always be remembered as Norman Bates in the film Psycho. His face, his voice, his strange stare, it all became part of movie history. But while the world was watching his every move, Anthony was hiding a huge part of himself. He was gay, he was scared, and he believed that if people found out, everything would fall apart. That fear shaped his life. Anthony lived in a time when being gay could end a career. The film industry wanted its stars to be perfect, straight, and easy to sell. Anthony knew this, so he lived two lives. In public, he acted like a regular man. He married a woman, Barry Berenson. They had 2 kids. People saw a happy family. But in private, he had deep, serious relationships with men. None of those stories were shared. He didn't speak of them. He couldn't. He had been in love, but it was a love he had to hide. Friends close to him knew, but the outside world did not. He was always worried about what people would say, how they would react, and how his bosses in Hollywood would treat him. Every day was a battle between who he was and who he had to pretend to be. That's not living. That's surviving. Then came the disease. Like Rock Hudson, Anthony Perkins was diagnosed with AIDS. He didn't go public. He didn't want people to know. He stayed silent. But the disease didn't stay quiet. It took over. And in 1992, he died from AIDS-related illness. Only then did people start to hear the truth. Only after he was gone did the world learn about the life he had kept locked away. 3. Raymond Burr. He was a familiar face on TV. People knew him from shows like Perry Mason and Ironside. He played strong, smart characters who always had the answers. But in real life, he was keeping a big truth from everyone. Raymond was gay, and he did everything he could to make sure no one found out. His whole public image was built on lies. He made up stories. He told people he had a wife who died. He said they had a son who also died. But none of it was true. It was all made up so people would believe he was a normal straight man. Hollywood wanted clean, simple stories. and Raymond gave them just that. He acted on screen, and he acted off screen too. In private, Raymond had a loving partner named Robert Benavides. They were together for over 30 years. They built a life, they shared a home, started a business, and took care of each other. But no one outside their close circle knew. Raymond never spoke about Robert publicly. He never admitted the truth. He thought it was too risky. He feared losing his job, his fans, and his life in Hollywood. When he died in 1993, the truth finally came out. People learned that the man they had watched for decades had been living a lie. Some were shocked. Others were sad. Many felt sorry that someone had to go so far to hide who they were. Raymond had spent a lifetime pretending, all because he was afraid of what the truth might do. 4. Robert Reed. Here is a man who was best known as the dad from The Brady Bunch. He seemed like the perfect father, the perfect man. Families across America loved him. He was kind, calm, and always had the right words. But the man they saw on TV was not the man he really was. Robert Reed was gay, and he kept that truth buried deep. He didn't want the world to know. He feared what would happen if they did. His role on The Brady Bunch made things harder. How could he play America's dad and also be himself? He believed people wouldn't accept both, so he stayed quiet. He kept his private life private, even from some of the people he worked with. Robert never came out, not once, not during the show, not after. When he got sick in the early 1990s, the world still didn't know. He died in 1992 from colon cancer. Later, it was revealed that he had also been HIV positive. That news shocked people. Slowly, stories came out. Friends and co-stars shared what they knew. The truth was finally out, but it came too late for Robert. So James Dean. If you think about someone cool, this man shows up immediately in your head. Everyone knew it. He starred in movies like Rebel Without a Cause and quickly became a symbol of youth and rebellion. But behind the charm and swagger was a young man full of questions and confusion. James Dean died young, just 24 years old, but his short life left behind big questions. One of the biggest was about his sexuality. He dated women, or at least that's what the public saw. But those who knew him best said there was more. Rumors followed him. People whispered that he had relationships with men, that he struggled with who he was. He never confirmed anything, but he never really denied it either. He once told a close friend that he didn't want to be limited by labels. Still, the fear was there. James knew what the world was like. Hollywood wanted clean images. Men had to look and act a certain way. Any hint of being different could ruin everything. So he hid. He laughed when people asked questions. He changed the subject. He didn't trust the world to understand. And maybe he was right. Would fans have still loved him if they knew? He died in a car crash in 1955. After his death, people started digging into his life. They wanted to know the real James Dean. Slowly, stories came out. People shared memories. Some said he had boyfriends. Others said he had once cried about being confused. But it was all secondhand. We'll never know for sure, because James didn't get the chance to tell us himself. 6. Edward Gorey. He was a strange man. His drawings were creepy but fun, and his stories were full of shadows. People loved his art, but no one really knew who he was. He didn't talk about himself much. If someone asked, he would say confusing things, never a straight answer. He said maybe he was asexual. Then he hinted maybe he was gay. But he never truly said yes or no. That silence became part of who he was. Behind his thick glasses and big coats, he stayed quiet. People wondered why. Was he scared? Was he protecting himself? Back then, it was hard to be honest if you were different. He lived in a time when being gay could ruin your life. Maybe he thought he had no choice. He lived alone, surrounded by books and cats. His house was filled with strange things, much like his mind. He said he didn't care what people thought, but he never opened up. Why not just say the truth? Maybe he felt it was nobody's business, or maybe he was too afraid of what would happen. When he died in 2000, people started looking deeper. They found more hints, letters, notes, small things that painted a bigger picture. His close friends started sharing more. It became clear he had feelings for men. But he never talked about it out loud. Why stay silent? Why let people wonder? His art showed lonely characters and dark thoughts. Maybe that was his way of speaking. 7. Stanley Baxter. This actor made people laugh for years. He wore funny costumes, did silly voices, and made people forget their worries. But he had a worry of his own that never left. He was gay, and he didn't want anyone to know. Not really. Not back then. He married a woman named Moira Robertson. But even before they said, "I do," he told her the truth. He said he was gay. She knew. And still they married. That tells you how strong the pressure was. In those days, being gay could ruin everything. You could lose your job, your friends, and your name. Stanley hid behind comedy. He made jokes, played parts, and smiled. But behind the mask, he was hurting. He didn't want to be the way he was. He even said those exact words, "I never wanted to be gay." Can you imagine how heavy that felt? To live a whole life pretending? People around him may have guessed, but they never said anything. He didn't say anything either, not to the public. Years passed. His career faded a bit. He got older. And only in 2020, when his biography came out, did the truth get written down. He had waited his whole life. Why? Because the world made him wait. He never got to live out loud. When that book came out, people finally saw the full picture. It was sad. Behind every laugh, there had been silence. Behind every joke, there was pain. He had told Moira the truth. He had done his part, but the world hadn't been ready to listen. He felt trapped and maybe a little broken. 8. Scotty Bowers. He didn't look like a man with big secrets. He was a Marine, clean-cut and strong. But after the war, he found himself in a strange world. He started working at a gas station in Hollywood. That gas station became a meeting spot for some of the most famous names in show business. What they came for wasn't gas. They came for private meetings. Scotty would arrange them. Sometimes he joined in. It was all quiet, all behind closed doors. He knew what he was doing was risky, but he also knew he was giving people something they couldn't get openly. These stars had money, power, and fame, but they couldn't love who they wanted. The world wouldn't let them. So Scotty made it easier for them to hide it. He kept their secrets for decades, and they trusted him. He didn't write his book until 2012. By then, most of the people he wrote about were gone. He said he waited out of respect, but some wondered if he was protecting himself too. Maybe he didn't want to face the backlash. After the book came out, people were shocked. Some denied everything. Others believed every word. His stories opened a window into the hidden lives of stars. 9. Cole Porter. This guy wrote some of the most beautiful music the world has ever heard. Songs about love, heartbreak, and joy. But his own love story was never told fully. He married Linda Lee Thomas in 1919. She was smart, stylish, and knew the truth. Cole loved men. Their marriage was more like a deal, a way to keep up appearances. She gave him cover, and he gave her a glamorous life. He didn't tell the public. He couldn't. Back then, it would have ended everything. He was rich and famous, but even he wasn't safe. People talked in private, but no one dared say it out loud. He had boyfriends. He went to parties where things were more open, but he made sure nothing came out in the open. His songs never used real names or stories. He wrote of love, but kept his own love in the dark. He must have felt lonely. Even surrounded by people, he had to act. Always acting, always smiling. He couldn't be himself, not fully. And that weight gets heavy over time. How do you write so many love songs and never speak of your own love? That takes strength, but also shows fear. Was the music a cover? Or was it his only way to speak? When Linda died in 1954, something changed. He seemed more distant, more broken. He kept writing, but the spark faded. He never found someone he could be open with. Not really. And he never told the truth to the world. Even now, people debate it. But the clues are all there. He lived in silence, so his art could live loud. 10. Richard Pryor. A man who was loud, raw, and real. He told jokes that made people squirm. He talked about race, substances, and pain. But one thing he kept quiet for a long time was his sexuality. He was married many times. He had children. People thought they knew him, but he later shared something big. He had been with men. This wasn't a rumor. He said it himself, not in a big speech, just simply as if it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was brave. In a world where people still judge, Pryor told the truth. Some didn't believe him, others ignored it, but it was there, and he didn't take it back. He said he wasn't ashamed. He had lived a wild life, full of ups and downs. And this was just part of it. He didn't try to explain it or make it sound pretty. He just said it. That's who he was, straightforward, even when it hurt. 11. Cary Grant. Cary Grant was one of the biggest names in old Hollywood. He looked perfect in every movie. He played the smooth, charming man that women loved. He wore nice suits, had a confident smile, and made it all look easy. People everywhere admired him. But there was another side to Cary that the public never really saw. For over 10 years, he lived with another actor, Randolph Scott. They shared a house, took vacations together, and were seen as very close. Some people even called it a love story, hiding in plain sight. But neither Cary nor Randolph ever admitted anything. They gave no answers, just smiles and silence. Cary also married women. He had 5 wives over the years. But the marriages didn't last long, and some ended with cold words and distance. Behind the glamour, something felt hidden. Some people say Cary was deeply scared of what others would think if they knew the truth. He wanted to keep his career strong. Back then, being gay could end a Hollywood star's life overnight. You could lose everything. Maybe Cary didn't want to risk that. Maybe he thought no one would accept him. Or maybe he didn't even accept himself. Did he ever feel safe, to be honest? Or was he always acting, even when the cameras were off? When you look at his photos with Randolph Scott, there is something warm and real. They look happy. Not like 2 actors posing, but like 2 people who understood each other. Still, Cary never said anything. Not in interviews, not in books, not even near the end of his life. The truth stayed locked away. 12. Liberace. He was one of the loudest and most colorful stars of his time. He played the piano like no one else. He wore bright clothes full of sparkle, long capes, and big rings. His shows were big and full of lights. He smiled at the crowd, told jokes, and made people laugh. Everyone knew who Liberace was. But the truth is, no one really knew him at all. For all the fun he shared, there was one thing he never told anyone. He was gay. He said many times that he wasn't. When a newspaper said he was, he got very upset. He even sued them and won the case. He made it clear that he would not let anyone call him gay. He kept up the act for years, even as more and more people started to guess. He told the world one thing, but lived something very different behind closed doors. His smile was real, but it hid pain. It hid fear. In 1987, Liberace died from AIDS-related problems. The sickness took him fast. After he passed, people close to him began to speak. They said yes, he was gay. He had long relationships, but always kept them secret. He never showed those parts of his life in public. 13. Ed Koch. This guy ran one of the biggest cities in the world. As mayor of New York City, he stood in front of crowds, made speeches, and faced big problems. One of those problems was the AIDS crisis. It hurt thousands of people and scared even more. While Ed was in charge, people started asking about his personal life. There were whispers and rumors that he was gay. But Ed never answered. He kept everything private. He didn't confirm or deny anything. That silence became louder over time. Some people felt hurt by it. During a time when the gay community needed a strong voice, Ed stayed quiet. Was he scared of losing power? Did he think people wouldn't vote for him if they knew? Or was it just too personal for him to say out loud? Whatever the reason, his silence became a part of his story. When Ed died in 2013, some close friends finally confirmed what many had guessed for years. Yes, Ed Koch was gay, but he had chosen not to say it during his life. That choice still sparks debate. Some say he did what he thought was best. Others say he missed a chance to lead with truth. 14. Paul Reubens. He became famous as Pee Wee Herman. His character was silly, wild, and full of life. Kids loved him, adults laughed too. But behind that loud and colorful act was a man who kept his real self hidden. Paul never talked much about his private life. For years, people wondered. They asked, but he stayed quiet. He played the part of Pee Wee, but no one really knew Paul. Then, in 2023, after his death, a documentary came out. It told the truth. Paul Reubens had been gay all along. He finally shared what he had kept hidden. He said it had been hard, really hard to stay silent all those years. He felt trapped by his own success. Being Pee Wee meant keeping parts of himself out of sight. He was afraid of what people might say. Would fans turn away? Would jobs stop coming? It hurt him to hide. The more people loved Pee Wee, the more Paul felt he couldn't be honest. He wore a mask, and not just on TV. He wore it in real life. Behind the fun and laughs was a man who felt alone. He didn't want pity. He just wanted to be seen. But the fear was too strong. He kept quiet until the very end. When the truth finally came out, fans were surprised, but they also felt sad. They saw that behind the laughs was a heavy pain. Paul lived with that pain, and it shaped everything he did. 15. William Haynes. He lived during a time when being openly gay could end your career overnight. He was one of the top silent film stars. He had charm, talent, and fans everywhere. But unlike others, he didn't want to hide. He loved a man named Jimmy Shields. They lived together and shared their lives. William refused to lie about who he was. Hollywood didn't like that. The studios told him to pick his career or his partner. He picked love. Because of that, his acting days ended. Just like that, one of Hollywood's brightest stars was pushed out. But William didn't fall apart. He found a new path. He became an interior designer and got really good at it. He designed homes for famous people. Even without the spotlight, he still shined in his own way. He and Jimmy stayed together for decades. They built a quiet but strong life. While other stars hid, William stood by his truth. It cost him fame, but it gave him peace. Some people look at his story and feel proud. Others feel sad. Why did it have to be one or the other? Why couldn't he have both? William Haynes proved that love can be stronger than fear. He lost a lot, but he never lost himself. He didn't let others decide how he should live. His bravery stood out in a time when most were afraid to even whisper the truth. His story still matters. It shows what real courage looks like. Not loud or flashy, just honest. 16. Richard Chamberlain. This man was the kind of actor people called perfect. He had the face, the charm, and the roles that made women swoon and men jealous. He starred in hit TV shows and movies, and to the world, he looked like a straight Hollywood star living a dream life. But that was only half the story. Richard had a part of himself that he hid, locked away from everyone, his sexuality. He was gay, but never said it out loud for most of his life. In 1989, a French magazine exposed him. They didn't ask him, they didn't wait. They just printed the truth he was too scared to say. But even after that, Richard didn't speak up. He stayed silent for 14 more years, until 2003, when he wrote about it in his book. That's when he finally confirmed what many had guessed. Why wait so long? Because Hollywood was not a kind place for gay actors. Being gay could ruin your career. You could lose roles, lose fans, lose everything. Richard knew that. He had seen it happen to others. He played the game to survive. He smiled for cameras, dated women in public, and told lies just to keep working. He wasn't proud of it, but he felt like he had no choice. He feared being honest would cost him everything he worked for. Even his closest friends didn't always know the real him. Fame was his mask, and he wore it well. In 2025, Richard Chamberlain died. Many remembered him as a great actor, but behind the roles and the red carpet was a man who had to live in fear of his truth. He spent most of his life pretending, and that left scars people didn't see. He wasn't just hiding from the public. He was hiding from himself. 17. Dirk Schaefer. In 1992, he was chosen as Playgirl's Man of the Year, and everyone noticed. He had the looks, the body, and the charm that made people pay attention. But behind the strong smile and pretty face was a man stuck between two worlds. Dirk was gay, but the world he worked in didn't want to hear it. Being honest wasn't safe. It could ruin everything, and Dirk knew it. He acted straight when the cameras were on. He did interviews, went to parties, and posed for photos as if he were the guy every woman wanted. He had to keep up the lie. He was scared that telling the truth would take away his career, his fame, and his worth in the public's eyes. That pressure is hard. It's like living in a cage you can't escape from. Dirk tried to speak out through art. He made a movie called Circuit, a film that told his story, what it was like to pretend, to live a lie, and to be scared of showing who you really are. He wanted people to understand. He didn't just want fame, he wanted to be seen. But even with that movie, the truth didn't set him free. The weight of living two lives stayed heavy on his shoulders. In 2015, Dirk was found dead in his car. The cause was substance-related, but that's not the whole story. Substances don't just appear. Pain brings them, fear brings them, loneliness brings them. Dirk had spent so much of his life hiding that when the cameras stopped rolling, the silence became too loud. 18. Lige Clark. In the 1960s and 70s, he used his words to stand up for gay people. He wrote columns, joined protests, and spoke about things most people were too scared to even mention. He helped shape one of the first loud voices in the gay rights movement. On paper, he looked fearless. But his real life was more complicated. Even while he worked for change, Lige didn't always share his truth with the people closest to him. To the world, he was bold. He used his pen like a weapon, writing for a gay newspaper and fighting the unfair rules of the time. But when it came to his own family, he stayed quiet. He didn't tell them everything. Maybe he didn't think they'd understand. Maybe he didn't want to risk losing them. Being out in the streets is one thing. Being out at home is another. In 1975, Lige took a trip to Mexico. He never came back. He was eliminated under strange and unclear conditions. Some say it was random. Others aren't so sure. The details are still fuzzy, and many questions were never answered. What we do know is that he died young and too soon. His voice was silenced when the fight still needed him. 19. Tab Hunter. He was the golden boy of the 1950s. Blonde hair, bright smile, leading roles. He was the man every woman was supposed to want. His name meant success, and his face sold movies. But what no one knew was that Tab was living a lie. He was gay, and in those days, that was a secret you had to take to the grave. And Tab nearly did. He had boyfriends, real love, real heartbreak. But all of it stayed behind closed doors. In public, he smiled beside actresses. He went on fake dates. He even hid his relationships from some friends. The fear of being found out was too big. Hollywood was brutal. One word could end your career. One photo could destroy everything. Tab stayed silent, not because he wanted to lie, but because he didn't see another way. The studio bosses controlled his image, and he had to play along. It wasn't just about money. It was about survival. He wasn't just acting in movies. He was acting every day of his life. In 2005, when he was older, Tab finally spoke up. He wrote a book and told the truth. By then, his career was mostly over, but he wanted the world to know who he really was. For the first time, he didn't have to hide. People listened. Some were shocked, some weren't. But he had done what he couldn't do before, live as himself. Tab passed away in 2018. People remembered the handsome star, but now they also knew the pain behind the smile. He had spent his youth hiding love, fearing rumors, and protecting a lie, all because the world wouldn't let him be free. 20. Bruz Fletcher. Bruz Fletcher was a performer in the 1930s, a time when being gay wasn't just dangerous, it was life-threatening. He was smart, funny, and bold on stage. His songs were filled with jokes about the world and quiet hints about who he really was. People laughed, clapped, and cheered, but few realized Bruz was singing about his own life. That was how he told the truth, through music, through comedy, and behind a smile. Off stage, things were very different. Bruz lived in fear. Police were starting to target gay performers. They raided clubs, arrested artists, and made life unbearable for anyone who didn't fit the rules. Even if you had talent, it wasn't enough to protect you. Bruz saw the danger growing closer. He felt it pressing down. In 1941, Bruz couldn't take it anymore. At just 34 years old, he ended his life. The pain had grown too strong. He had given the world his talent, his humor, and his voice. But the world gave him fear in return.